The sound of hammering echoed through the narrow alleys of Cavite, a small province south of Manila. It wasn't the metallic kind that disturbed neighbors, it was rhythmic, almost musical. 65-year-old Mang Ernesto Rivera, a carpenter with rough, calloused hands and a crooked back, was building another wooden chair outside his small nipa hut. The sun was already high, beads of sweat trickling down his forehead, but he hummed softly as he worked. A tune, low, soulful, filled with both pain and peace, escaped his cracked lips. "Papa," a young girl's voice called from behind him. "You're singing again." Ernie turned to see his 12-year-old granddaughter Mila, standing barefoot on the bamboo floor, holding a small radio missing its antenna. "Ah, Mila," he chuckled, wiping his face with an old rag. "The wood sings better when I sing with it." She smiled, shaking her head. "You always say that, but Mama said you used to sing for people, not just for wood." The smile faded slightly from his face. "That was long ago," he murmured. "The forgotten dream." Ernie once dreamed of becoming a singer. Back in the 1970s, he sang in local bars and fiestas with a voice so powerful it made strangers stop in their tracks. He even joined singing contests, earning small prizes, sometimes a sack of rice, sometimes just applause. But life had other plans. His wife, Luz, fell ill when their daughter was young. The hospital bills drained everything they had. To feed his family, Ernie traded microphones for hammers. Years passed, Luz passed away, and his daughter migrated to Dubai for work. Now it was just him and little Mila. Every nail he drove into the wood carried a note of longing, a silent reminder of a song left unfinished. One evening, Mila came running to him, waving a flyer she had found online at the local internet cafe. "Papa, look, America's Got Talent is holding online auditions. They say even people outside the US can join through video." Ernie squinted at the bright printout. "America's Got Talent, that's for young people, Anik. I'm just an old carpenter." "But Papa," Mila insisted, "they said it's for anyone with talent. Don't you always tell me to never give up on my dreams?" Her words struck something deep inside him. The dreams he had buried beneath sawdust and wood shavings suddenly stirred. That night, while the moonlight washed the bamboo walls silver, Ernie sat with his old guitar, its strings rusty but still in tune. Mila recorded him with her mother's old smartphone as he sang, "You Raise Me Up." His voice cracked at first, but as the song rose, so did his spirit. Every note carried the weight of his years, his love, his losses. By the time he finished, Mila was crying softly. "Papa," she whispered, "that was beautiful." He smiled gently. "Let's not hope too much, Anik. But maybe they'll hear me." The unexpected call. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, as Ernie was fixing a neighbor's door, Mila came running, screaming his name. "Papa," they replied, "they want to see you, on America's Got Talent." The hammer fell from his hand. "What? That can't be true." But it was. The producers loved his submission. They were so touched by his story and voice that they wanted him to perform live in Los Angeles. Ernie froze. "But how will we go? I don't even have a passport." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, donations from neighbors, and a crowdfunding campaign started by a kind local reporter who heard about the singing carpenter. The story spread like wildfire. Soon, Filipinos from around the world donated to help him and Mila fly to America. It was the first time Ernie had ever left the country. The journey of a lifetime. On the plane, he looked out the window, watching the endless clouds. Mila squeezed his hand. "Nervous, Papa," he smiled faintly, more like scared. "But I'm not doing this for me anymore. I'm doing this for your Lola, and for you." When they landed in Los Angeles, the city lights dazzled them. Everything was bigger, louder, brighter than they'd ever seen. At the hotel, producers helped them settle in. They told him his audition would be in 2 days. He hardly slept that night, rehearsing softly under his breath, afraid his old voice might fail him when it mattered most. The big day. The stage of America's Got Talent looked like another world, massive screens, dazzling lights, and 4 judges sitting at a long table: Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. Backstage, contestants buzzed with excitement. Young dancers stretched, magicians rehearsed, singers vocalized. And in the middle of it all stood Ernie, in his worn-out brown shoes, holding a patched-up guitar. A young stagehand approached him. "Sir, are you ready?" Ernie nodded slowly. "As ready as I'll ever be." The lights dimmed. The announcer's voice boomed. "Next up, All the way from the Philippines, we have Ernesto Rivera. He stepped onto the stage, blinking against the lights. The crowd murmured. An old man, humble and quiet, looked out of place among the flashy acts. Simon leaned forward. "Hello, sir. What's your name?" "I'm Ernesto Rivera," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm from the Philippines. I'm a carpenter by trade." The audience chuckled softly, not unkindly. Simon raised an eyebrow. "A carpenter? And what will you be doing for us today?" Ernie grinned nervously. "I'll be singing a song that means a lot to me. I built things all my life, with wood and nails. But this time, I hope to build something with my heart." The crowd applauded warmly. Simon nodded. "All right, Mr. Rivera. The stage is yours." The song that built his soul. Ernie closed his eyes. The music began. Soft piano chords. He had chosen Fix You by Coldplay. "When you try your best but you don't succeed." His voice was fragile at first, like an old violin, trembling with age. But as the verse went on, it grew stronger, filled with decades of love, pain, and quiet strength. "When you love someone but it goes to waste." The audience grew still. Even Simon's usual stoic expression softened. By the time he reached the chorus, his voice soared, rich, raw, beautiful. "Lights will guide you home, and ignite your bones." Tears welled up in the eyes of audience members. Mila, watching from backstage, clutched her hands to her heart. Sophia whispered, "Oh my God, he's incredible." The second verse flowed smoother, his guitar strings vibrating with emotion. Each word felt like a prayer, for his late wife, for every nail he'd driven, for every dream he'd once buried. As he sang the final note, the entire theater stood on its feet. A standing ovation. Ernie stood there, overwhelmed, eyes wide with disbelief. Simon leaned into his microphone. "Ernesto, I've heard thousands of singers. But what you did right there," he paused, voice thick with emotion, "that wasn't just singing. That was soul." The crowd roared in agreement. Howie wiped his eyes. "Sir, you didn't just fix us, you healed us." Sophia leaned forward, smiling through tears. "That was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever seen." Heidi clasped her hands. "You reminded us what music is supposed to do. To touch hearts." Simon turned toward the others, then back at Ernie. "You know, I think the world needs to hear you again." He pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti burst through the air, swirling like a golden rainstorm. Ernie gasped as the shimmering paper fell around him. He looked up, tears streaming down his face, and saw Mila running toward him from backstage. They embraced under the golden lights, both crying uncontrollably. The entire arena cheered. That night, a humble carpenter from the Philippines had built the most beautiful thing of all, a bridge between hearts. The world falls in love. Overnight, the video of his audition went viral. Within 24 hours, it had over 60 million views across YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. Comments flooded in from every corner of the world. "Greater than, he made me cry." "Pure soul." This man's voice carries a lifetime of stories. From carpenter to legend, Filipinos everywhere were bursting with pride. News channels replayed his audition again and again. Reporters gathered outside his old hut in Cavite, interviewing neighbors who proudly called him Kuya Ernie, the golden buzzer man. Even celebrities shared his clip. One post from Josh Groban said, "This man reminds me why I sing." The live shows. Weeks later, Ernie returned for the live semifinals. This time, he wore a new suit, donated by a Filipino designer in Los Angeles, but he still carried his old guitar. He performed Bridge Over Troubled Water. His voice filled the massive auditorium, each note steady and true. When he sang, it felt like time stopped. By the end, the judges and audience once again gave him a standing ovation. Simon said softly, "You have no idea how many people you've inspired. You've shown that dreams don't expire, they just wait for the right moment." The final night, for the grand finale, Ernie chose to perform an original song, something he had written in his youth for Luz but never shared. The song was titled, My Forever Home. It spoke about finding peace in simple things, love, faith, and the warmth of family. As he sang, pictures of Luz and Mila flashed on the screen behind him. The entire theater glowed with golden light. Many in the audience wept openly. When the final note faded, Simon stood slowly. "Mr. Rivera," he said, voice breaking slightly, "I've been doing this show for years. And I don't think I've ever been this moved. You're not just an inspiration, you're a reminder of what matters." He turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our heart of this season." The outcome: when the results were announced, Ernie didn't win first place, but it didn't matter. The world had already crowned him their champion. Record labels reached out, talk shows invited him, he was even offered a small contract to record an album of classic songs and one original track, dedicated to Luz. The title, Built with Love, returning home. Months later, Ernie and Mila returned to the Philippines. The airport was packed with cheering fans holding banners, "Welcome home, Golden Buzzer Hero." As they walked out, Ernie waved shyly, smiling through tears. Back in Cavite, he rebuilt his old workshop, but this time, it wasn't just a carpenter's shed. It was a small music studio where he taught local kids how to sing. Music, he told them, is just like carpentry. You start with something rough. You sand it, polish it, and build it with love. Mila sat beside him, now learning guitar. Together, they sang the same song that had changed their lives. Sometimes, when the wind blew through the coconut trees, the neighbors swore they could still hear the echoes of his voice, soft, steady, timeless. And every time Ernie picked up his hammer, he smiled. Because now, every nail he drove wasn't for survival, it was for gratitude. He had built his final masterpiece, a life that proved it's never too late to dream again.